At Sustainable Wealth Secrets, we talk about unlocking generational wealth that delivers personal freedom and security that money cannot buy. So I want to share this with you. There are actually 4 steps that'll help you go from just a high income into a high net worth. I'm Justin Hitt with Sustainable Wealth Secrets. So first off, the majority of the subscribers to my newsletter are high-income professionals or entrepreneurs who have they're cash rich. They got a high income, but they don't have many assets. They don't have passive income. All their income is active. They're in a situation where if they lost their job tomorrow, they probably got about a month, maybe a little bit longer if they were lucky, but they're definitely high income, not rich yet. Now, what does it mean to be rich? Well, what I mean to be rich is that you have a multiple of your yearly expenses available to you in the event of emergency. So I'll tell you right up front, many of the definitions that we use here at Sustainable Wealth Secrets are different definitions. Where did they come from? The definitions that I use came from actually wealthy people. So I know a lot of wealthy families. I know a lot of wealthy individuals who are running businesses or who have ran businesses. I've had mentors. I've had people that have sat down with me and talked with me, and they've never worked since age 40. Now, they've worked, but they do things that they want to do. I've known people that have sold businesses, multiple millions of dollars coming in. Most of the time, they handle this very well. I also observe failures, a lot of folks that have failed at what they did. Now, I have made mistakes with the expense of experience, and I've been bankrupt before. I've had businesses fail. I do pretty good, but ultimately I'm learning with you, and I'm applying the strategies and seeing what works and what doesn't. But I am coming from a pretty high authority. Now, many of these individuals who are coming in and sharing these insights with me are in situations they do not want their name used. So what tends to happen as you gain additional wealth, it's probably already happening with your high income, is that with all the data aggregation services, you start getting more offers, you start getting more phone calls, you start getting more credit card offers, you start getting relatives asking you for money. So one of the things that we look at here is how you function in society. And one individual has given me, you live like a poor man and save like a rich man. So essentially, your external view is not going to be anywhere near your actual wealthy situation. And what we do see is many times that people will wear their wealth on their sleeve but have nothing to show for it. So I've developed these 4 steps based on hundreds of interviews with entrepreneurs, business professionals, doctors, individuals who have actually built multi-million-dollar generational wealth. Now, generational wealth means that when you die, the next generation will have income, but not necessarily will they get to spend it. They'll gain the income, they'll gain the opportunity, they'll have security financial security. But again, we also talk about the skills. They need to have the skills because inflation, higher interest rates, all the things that can happen, legal problems, they can take the money away. So we want to set it up so that we have more than money, and that we have it in a structure that allows us to carry it on from generation to generation. So we have these 4 steps that we go through. And step number 1 is to know your financial situation. There are structures and different concepts for turning income into wealth that you may not understand. And if you don't understand it, please don't use it. You need to understand it. How do you understand your financial situation? To start is you're going to do some bookkeeping, and you're going to work with a CPA or a CPFA. So one is a certified professional financial advisor, and one is a certified professional accountant. These individuals will help you set up your books, they'll help you set up your business, they'll help you set up your chart of accounts so that you actually know what your financial situation is. Because I've had people tell me, so we're onboarding a client, and again, I'm not a financial services professional. I'm kind of a guide, kind of a reporter who connects you with professionals, and I'll do the coaching side of it. So I'll ask somebody, hey, when you sat down with the CPA, what new information did you discover? And now the CPA is independent of me. I am a kind of an auditor. My skill is risk management and business development. And so I don't have any control over what the CPA does or doesn't do, but I'm going to assess quality and accuracy and all this stuff because I know what financial reports look like. I have a background in finance. I've ran businesses before. But again, you're going to know your situation. That means a printed report that shows you your free net cash flow. And a lot of times I'll say, hey, what did you learn working with the CPA? How do you like them? What's going on? And they're going to say, oh my gosh, I had no idea how broke I am. Now, again, if you're broke, that's okay because something that's broke can be fixed. And now that you know your financial situation is not what you thought it was, you're making $250,000 a year. President Obama claims that you're rich, but yet you can't pay your bills on time. You're having problems with the family money. You've got loans out to your in-laws. You didn't really have a very good vacation because you were worried about having to pay off the vacation because you put it on credit cards. But you earn all this money and you don't have any time to enjoy it. There's all these problems. So you want to look again, step number 1, financial situation. Now, I start with the financial situation because a lot of folks don't want to look at their time. A lot of you out there are busting your ass for $250,000, $300,000 a year only to have your bosses grinding your back and getting $1 million bonuses and having the frustration and health problems that come with being overwhelmed by your position. But again, this is why we go to step number 2. Step number 2 is to clearly define your goals and outcomes. Now, we're not just talking about money goals. Because a lot of times I'll say to somebody, hey, how was it with the CPA? And they'll say, oh, I'm really broke. And then I'll say, well, what are your goals? And they'll say, I want to be really rich. That's not where we're going here. First off, you want to have a free positive net cash flow because that gives you choice. If you have money left over after your expenses, after investments, after covering the basics, after making sure your insurance is straight, your health insurance, life insurance, that kind of stuff, making sure your home is financially covered and your emergency funds are funded, all that, and there's still money left over, then you could technically be rich. But you'll at least feel and have a knowledge that you have some security. But what other goals? How much time do you want to be at work? How much time do you want to spend with family? How many weeks a year would you like to have vacations? Where would you like to have the vacations? What would be really enjoyable? I know a lot of folks that do the vacation that everybody else wants them to do. So I was working at this one environment, and this female executive shows us her wonderful vacation in Italy, and it looked, this is a little bit before Pinterest and stuff, but it looked like a Pinterest vacation. Beautiful pictures and all this incredible stuff. But I had a private conversation with her later, and she disclosed to me that she'd rather not have gone on vacation. It was too expensive. It was a lot of headaches. Most of the time they spent in an airplane getting back and forth. And then it was one of those package tours, so it was kind of rushed. And then she didn't get to see everything she wanted to see. It sounded like the vacation was horrible. But she presented it to everybody as it was a beautiful and wonderful experience. And everybody just awed over it because that was the social expectation. But when we had a personal conversation, she would just rather to stay home and tend her garden and relax and kind of maybe go to the spa. And so we want to look at what are your goals and outcomes. The outcomes are real important because if you'd rather just have a relaxing spa weekend with your spouse and maybe play a couple rounds of golf, you can do that in your own neighborhood. You don't have to go out of town to do that. You don't have to have the frustration of travel. You don't have to spend the extra money. Now, your friends and buddies are going to be like, oh, I went to Pebble Beach and we played and, fortunately I got in at the club. You have to understand that your money is your money and the decisions you make with your money serves your future self. And so that, again, step number 2 is clearly define your goals and the outcomes that you want. Because step 3 is develop the necessary wealth building skills. That income isn't going to last forever. You could have a global pandemic or even an economic hiccup in your industry that causes your income to go away. You could have a change in management that causes your job to go away. So the skills necessary to build wealth include skills to increase the number of income sources. So do you have primarily active income? How do you get more passive income? Do you have a single income stream? How do you get multiple streams of income? Again, how do we apply the income that we have, especially the free net cash flow, to create more income? Now, having assets is great, but if you have assets that cash flow, that's even better. So you can lock all your money up in an investment account, wish, pray, and hope it turns out well, or you could have an investment in yourself that helps you diversify your investments so that you know your investment agency is not ripping you off. I'm in the risk management world, and we see articles all the time. There's a recent one, a compliance officer got arrested for ripping off a bunch of investment accounts. Now, if you're with a reputable firm, perhaps you have a better chance of not getting ripped off, but I've seen major firms overfee their clients, and what happens is the majority of their investment goes away. I've seen mutual funds do this. The headlines in the news do not lie. There are people being prosecuted for this, and for every one person being prosecuted, there's probably 10 or 15 that are not. So again, it's the skills of critical thinking, the skills to evaluate investments, the skills to and discipline in many cases to take your surplus, your cash flow, and make reasonable investments that fit your personality, your traits, and then ultimately, number 4, take immediate action. Unfortunately, there are a lot of newsletter subscribers and even coaching clients at times that don't take the actions necessary, and then they come back to me and say, "Oh, I wish I would have gotten to silver. Oh, I wish I would have got." They're always like behind the bubble, and unfortunately, some of them that don't get involved, they come to me after they've lost a bunch of money in a bubble. But when you have the skills to generate wealth, you become more aware that these bubbles exist for a reason. So when I worked with venture capitalists, I was doing IT services. I had the great fortune to work with a couple. We kind of hit it off personality-wise, and so I got to see behind the scenes in the venture capitalist world during the dot-com bubble. When they acquired a company or did first-round funding or even seed funding, they knew that they were going to double their money in 5 years or less, or they were going to burn the company. So you'll notice a lot of these bubbles only last about 5 years, and there's a ramp-up stage, and then they bring in their secondary investors, and then they flip it over to a public offering, and that all happens in about a 5-year period, and then the bubble hits. Whether it's .com, whether it's silver, whether it's crypto, whether it's mortgage crisis, all of these bubbles have a ramp-up period that can sometimes go on for 20 years, but there's a ramp-up period, and then there's a flip. That is by design. That is how venture capitalists function. Now, one thing about the newsletter is I'll explain how things function based on firsthand experience and understanding of the industries, but I'm not criticizing it. It's just that's a fact. You work within the system rather than trying to change the system. I'm not advocating you change anything, but you got to take certain actions that you feel comfortable with and certain actions now rather than later. So when we talk about massive action, it is, so we talked about intentional thrift. So for example, wealth is a multiple of savings against your current expenses. So if you're making $150,000 a year and you spend $150,000 a year to have 2 years of expenses in the bank, you need $300,000 in the bank. Now maybe you have it, maybe you don't. But if you cut your expenses using intentional thrift down to $50,000 a year, maybe you move to a lower cost of living location, maybe you downsize, whatever, then you can have 2 years of savings or 2 years of expenses with only $100,000 in the bank. So do you see what happens here? The adjustment happens on both sides, as Benjamin Franklin talked about, is you either increase your means or lower your wants. The underlying factor here is that can happen very quickly. You don't want to hem and haw about it. You sit down with a CPA, you find out what your situation is, you sit down with your family, and explain the situation. You guys develop goals and objectives. Then you start gaining the skills that you need because you're going to identify gaps, and then you take action. The kids maybe go to a different private school. Now, again, they might go to a private school because it gives you, maybe you're a lawyer in a community and it gives you access to people. You have to make adjustments. There's more to this than just, flipping a switch. I sat down with a CPA once, and I said, look, I'm making this amount of money, and I got these investments, and I got all this stuff going on, and I really want to double up and really get a bigger nest egg going here. What do I need to do? And he tells me with a straight face, oh, you're doing incredible. For what you're making, oh my gosh, don't change a thing. I said, but I want to double it. Oh, doubling it, it's not going to happen. You're already making this, you're already making that. And I was like, well, what do you mean? And he says, oh, you're doing a good job. There's nothing. I said, no, please, run through my books, audit what I got, give me some ideas. He couldn't give me any ideas because I was making a multiple of what he was making, and ultimately, he didn't have the wealth skills. He had the bookkeeping skills. He had the basic tax skills. He didn't have the wealth skills. So you may have a CPA. You may have a estate attorney. You may have another lawyer. You may have a coach. You may have other people to build these skills up. But ultimately, when you get an idea, you got to take action. And because if you don't take action, then you're no better off than you were before. Now, I teach things that are different. I teach intentional thrift. I teach about building out asset bases that cash flow. I talk about things that are not some gimmick. I'm not trying to plug you into buying gold. I'm not trying to plug you into some downstream or anything like that. I'm an information service, an intelligence service per se, and we talk specifically about strategy. So those types of things, once you know them. So, for example, one of my podcasts, podcast number 18, which is years ago, we talked about how to make things pay for themselves. So if you're going to buy something, how do you make it pay for itself? So more likely it's going to be buying something for a business and then applying it, serving customers with it, and then the customers pay for it. And now it didn't cost you anything, but you get the asset. It didn't cost you anything. Anyway, it's easy to make money. The problem is keeping the money working for you and your family and for your future self. If you want to create generational wealth, it means that you're building up not only for your future self, but your future children, your future spouse, your future, legacy. And that's really what we focus on. Building a legacy with what you've got, starting where you are, using specific methods that work. Now, are there many choices in the methods you take? Yes. The key is to figure out which ones are right for you. Again, that's why we take massive action. But it really is just 4 steps. And if you join us at www.sustainablewealthsecrets.com, we've got a free newsletter. We also have a coaching service that's probably not open at this time because I only coach a small number of individuals. But we do help you focus on turning that income into sustainable wealth. The first time you see a profit and loss statement for your household, the first time that you structure your household just a little bit differently than everybody else, the first time you realize that the free net cash flow on your business is just accelerating that multiple of your expenses, that when you realize that you don't need to keep up with the Joneses, that you can actually excel past them, not necessarily in physical a lot of people spend a lot of money on physical stuff they don't really enjoy or experiences that they don't cherish. I want you to have meaningful and sustainable wealth now. Stop struggling to increase your net worth as a high-income professional. Start accumulating wealth today with these 4 steps. I'm Justin Hitt with Sustainable Wealth Secrets. Again, you can ask questions at www.sustainablewealthsecrets.com, all one word. Go to the contact page and ask your question. I'd love to hear from you. And the 4 steps are there. You can click Getting Started. And I'm really appreciative that you took the time today to spend with me. Congratulations. This education really makes a difference. This concept and view makes a difference. Again, I've interviewed hundreds of individuals. I've carefully looked at their situations. I've documented their best practices. I've tried to implement as much as I can, and it works when you will work on it. Again, I'm Justin Hitt with Sustainable Wealth Secrets, and I'll see you in the next podcast.